Welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee and have real conversations on faith, culture, and society. This is Mark Hyde.
And Chris Fuller.
And on today's episode of Real Talk Christian, we are asking the question of should we obey worldly authority, such as police, local, state, federal figures, and abide by what they say, and it is ever the right time to go against those governing authorities. Fuller, you ready for this one, buddy?
Let's go.
Let's go. Bro,
You're like,
the mic picked me up dancing.
Hot mic.
Dude, this song is a bop, bro.
Wow.
This song is a bop.
That was pretty good, Mark.
Oh, goodness. Well, we are back for another rendition, special feature.
Exactly.
The video hopefully is actually working this week.
You know, we went back and we previewed the video from last week before we released it, and we had tried a couple new things, and it was very glitchy. We had a lot of technical issues with it, and so we forewent the video last week, which is why you guys did not see a video.
Sad.
I'm sorry.
So sad. But the content's still there.
It's
the
still
conversation was good. Talking about that coffee mug Christianity.
Coffee mug
Christianity. Well, today's conversation, before we get into it, though, will never end up on a coffee. Well, actually, no. There's people who have masks and other things where it's like, I'm only wearing this because I don't want to pay a fine. But, whatever.
Class B felony.
This is not necessarily something we're going to put on a coffee mug.
Right, yeah. But it's an interesting topic, which is very in our face in this time period that we are in right now, especially here in Indiana at time of recording. I mean, the Monday law just went into effect of
this past week.
Yeah, this past week of recording. The last week of July is when we're recording this. But it was mandatory mask in public.
Yep. And if not, it was a Class B felony, up to $1,000 fine.
Originally, it was Class B, but I think they removed the Class B felony because some lawyers said it was unconstitutional, which I totally agree with.
Which it was. I mean, 100% was. But, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about coffee.
We're gonna just show, and actually, neither one of us drink coffee.
I drink coffee at night because it's way too late.
It's past both of our bedtimes.
I got 30 minutes until my brain turns to mush.
Yeah.
10:30. When 10:30 is my
so we
got
to jump right in before mine turned into mush an hour ago. So I mean,
that makes a lot more sense.
It is what it is.
That makes a lot more sense.
But what we're drinking tonight is tea, brought to you by Lipton. Oh, sorry.
No, brought to you by Meyer.
I think mine was.
Oh, yours
Lipton.
is name
Lipton.
brand Lipton. My Meyer brand. Paul Lindgren, this is for you, our fellow buddy who only drinks tea.
Well, decaffeinated tea.
Oh well,
and it has
mine's
to be
decaf. Yours isn't.
Mine's not. I'm sorry, but Paul, this is for you.
And I
speaking of Paul, he's messaging me right now. Marco Polo. It just popped up on my phone.
I love it. So whenever I make tea, I never put sugar in it because I don't think about it. But you're like, dude, you're an idiot. Put sugar in it. You drink sweet tea. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Bro, this is a good cup.
I'm telling you, man.
I'm drinking that pomegranate blueberry tea.
You didn't believe me with the coffee.
K-I, whatever. I don't know.
You didn't believe me with the coffee, and I turned you. You didn't believe me with the tea, and I turned you.
Moral of the story.
Look, listen to the fat kid.
Right.
Listen to the fat kid.
When it's about food.
But, Mark, let's, do we got any reviews today?
Nope, no new reviews.
No new reviews.
Well, I mean, the last
we're early into season 2, but
we're season 2, guys.
Definitely need to up the review game, listeners. If you have not left us a review on iTunes, do that now.
Pause us.
We are waiting.
Pause it.
We will give you a short silence section to pause us right now, to go and to leave us a review. All right, that's good.
I'm like, how long are we gonna hold this out?
That's good enough.
I was like, what's about to happen?
You're like, what? Really? All right, that's it. We're turning. Oh, okay, they're back.
We're back. Sorry, we're screwing with you.
That was a joke. So no, but if you wouldn't mind leaving us a review, help us get into the ears and the eyes now of future listeners.
And we'd be eternally grateful until we're dead.
But let's dive into this topic, man, that's very prevalent in today's society.
Yeah, set it up, man, because this is on your heart.
We talk about, how we talk about how we talk about faith, culture, and society. Well,
here we go.
This kind of encompasses all three: faith, culture, and society.
And they've all come to a head.
And they have. So we're talking about should we obey, and how much should we obey worldly? What we call worldly. It's not
sinners.
Sinful worldly. It's like actually like world governing.
Like your mayors,
your mayors, your
governors, your
Congress, Senate
police,
for us in America,
Parliament, Congress,
right? Whatever, wherever you're
whoever.
at, those that are in a position over us to make things that impact us, laws and stuff like that. Or like for us here in America, for our listeners that aren't here in America, our police, how they're an authority over us.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a little different for us because we gave them the authority. Like they're employed by us and we gave them that authority to govern us. So,
which is very interesting
so
to think about.
Just to set it up, I just want to kind of, this is just, there's not that many notes. I didn't put down many notes because I wanted it to be a conversational piece, but I wanted to start off with reading Romans 13, 1 through 7.
Mm-hmm. I need some Bible reading music. I need some of that. Some Bible reading.
So it says, every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. Huh? Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, period. For there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. So that's talking about your governing authorities. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear. I'm sorry, I got lost. For it does not bear the sword for nothing, for it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the ones who practice evil. Therefore, it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for rulers and servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Render to all what is due them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. So that's kind of a long.
That's a
passage.
long one, dude. I'm getting my stuff queued up. I'm about ready to go.
And I'm not gonna lie, my eyes were kind of going blurry there for a little bit because it is kind of late at night of time of recording. But so yeah, Mark, what do you take from that scripture right there, buddy? That's,
going right at it.
Let's just dive right into it.
And this is one of those thoughts where that's really funny that you can see the camera in that angle too from this view. That's really funny.
Oh yeah, you definitely can.
Oops, I must have bumped it. But
yeah,
either way,
go
it's
ahead.
fine. It's fine.
Go ahead. I'll take care of this. The technical
thank you.
difficulty.
So, I do want to say this is something that we're still processing. Like, this is not necessarily something that we're concrete on. So, as you're listening to this conversation, just understand that we're processing this too. Like, we're still figuring things out. So, hopefully you're thinking about this conversation while we think about it too. But, right off the bat though, Fuller, with this, at least this part of the conversation, it's pretty clear that God puts authorities over our lives. And if we are to obey God, we need to obey our authorities. And it flat out right there says, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they receive condemnation upon themselves. In other words, God's like, if you don't obey the leaders I put over you,
right,
you're disobeying me.
Right, exactly.
Which gets hard because you look at, when people were telling the apostles, like Peter, like, stop preaching Jesus, they're like, well, that's good. We fear God more than you, so we're not going to stop preaching Jesus. You see that with Paul. The early church started as originally it was connected to Judaism until the Jewish people were like, nah, you ain't with us either, bro, because you follow Jesus. You have the same, you follow the same God of the Old Testament, but not Jesus.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Christianity went underground. Not underground, but like there's a lot of underground things, like the catacombs. They met in the catacombs, and the two.
Well, and that was a lot to avoid persecution.
Exactly, but the governing authority said you can't worship God. The only God you can worship is Caesar, and they were like, no, we're not going to do that. So at what point is it okay to disobey authorities? Because the scripture is stupid clear. Pay taxes to those to whom you owe taxes. Follow the authorities God put in over your life because God put them there.
Right.
Or be subject to condemnation and wrath. Like, it's pretty clear.
Yeah. Right, yeah. It's very clear. But then we also can look at the story of what is it? Rashak, Meshach, and Abednego.
Shadrach, Meshach, and
Yeah,
Benny.
there you go. Yeah. Rack-Shack and Benny.
Rack-Shack and Benny.
Rack-Shack and Benny.
VeggieTales,
But how a statue was erected from, was it gold or
From gold.
brass?
I think gold.
Of the King Nebuchadnezzar, and how they were all commanded to bow down and worship, and Rack-Shack and Benny, that's easier for me to say, said no, we only bow down to one, and that's God, that's the Lord, and so they went against the governing authority, Mark. So I mean, how does that work if we're told in Romans not to go against it? But we see evidence throughout the Bible several times over Daniel praying when nobody should be praying except to Xerxes. Xerxes? No, it wasn't Xerxes.
Darius.
Darius. There we go. Yeah, that's another VeggieTale one. So
It actually is.
So I mean, we see it's riddled throughout the Bible of when Christians and people of faith and people of God have gone against the governing authority. So what really causes us to know when we should obey and when we should not obey?
And okay, so I think the only way we can answer that is looking at scripture.
Let's go.
Let go. Because you see Daniel, I mean,
Right.
with, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it was,
Right.
you will worship this. Like, no, we're going to worship God. Daniel is like, you can only pray to Darius. And he's like, no, I only pray to Yahweh.
Right.
You see in the New Testament when they said, stop preaching Jesus, they're like, no, we are going to always preach Jesus, whether you
Right.
tell us or not.
Well, we even saw it with the ride of Jesus into Jerusalem when the Pharisees told Jesus, "Hey, tell your disciple to shut up." And Jesus is like, if they're quiet, even the stones themselves will cry out. I mean,
Right.
that's a big
So
thing.
every time we see this where the governing authorities have been defied is when it comes to who will you worship? Who are you worshiping?
Right.
And this is where the conversation kind of comes to a head, though, because, we see in the early church, Christianity was outlawed, but the Christians gathered secretly and before the sun rose.
Right.
And they actually would worship in these considered spooky places that the Romans didn't go into the catacombs. So that's
It's
so
like,
the Christians were like, we ain't scared of the dead. They dead. Let's go.
and for people that don't know what a catacomb is, it's
tomb.
It's an underground grave. That's what it is.
And it's open.
Yeah.
Like it's like there's just bodies there.
Yeah, right.
And so, but the Romans have
Can you
a lot of
imagine the smell?
Oh, geez. Maybe worse than poopy diapers,
Like
man.
rotting flesh.
Well, they would do something to preserve it, I think, though, right?
Yeah, but come on, it's rotting flesh. How much can you? I mean, there's only so much Febreze.
That's right. That's true. That's especially back in the day.
Right.
But you'd see the Christians, like, they would go down there because the Romans wouldn't go down there because of superstition. And
Right.
Christians, like, we serve the God of the living, not the dead. So
Right.
those are just nasty, rotten bodies. That'd
Right.
be cool. So you see them openly defying the Roman government to gather together. And this is where the conversation hits because right now we're in COVID season. People thought it was only going to be 2 weeks and then a month. And now we're end of July. I mean, time of recording. I mean, not time, but yeah, time of recording. But now it's August when we're listening to this.
Right.
And I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks? We don't know. Everything's been changing week to week. And at what point do we as Christians have the right to question our authority? Because that's what the difference between, Americans have that ability over, like, if you have a king or whatever who could literally say, well, that's fine. You disagree with me. There goes your head.
Right.
And so Americans, we have the right for freedom and, don't tread on me. And it's funny, my body, my choice and all these different things. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying a lot of Americans will have this.
Right.
But when it comes to COVID and we're told you can't worship in a church anymore, and there's pastors specifically, just this past week, the big pastor, John MacArthur, you may have heard him or not. He's down in the valley. Grace to you, wrote amazing commentaries, great expositor. Disagree with him on a lot of things, but that's okay.
Hey, we're all humans. None of us are perfect.
Says Jesus, but
What? Jesus didn't say none of us were perfect. Well, yeah,
I said besides he was perfect.
Right.
Perfect sacrifice.
Right.
but whatever. But so John MacArthur, the government of California says we're going to limit the amount of services. There's no singing in service. Now, they didn't say canceling church, but they put a massive limit on it. No singing, no this. And MacArthur, for lack of a better word, gave the middle finger to the California government.
I still don't get the no singing thing. Like, what's the difference between singing and talking?
Because you project it even harder and faster because you're projecting more.
But
so
that's what
it's
the mask
farther
is for,
than
right?
6 feet.
Isn't that what the mask's for? That's what they keep
some
telling
places,
everybody.
But some places do say worship with a mask too. Like you can sing with a mask on, but people don't, and people on stage and whatever. So they just said no singing, which has been happening over in Germany. SoCal, it's been put into a rule for a while now. Like it's been there for a while. A former worship pastor of Southside, Brendan Proud, is back now in SoCal, and their church flat out said, we're defying the no sing order. Like, we're going to sing because we're going to worship God. You're telling us to not worship God anymore, so we're going to do it. But MacArthur pretty much said, yeah, we're not restricting our gatherings. We're still doing this. We're doing this. And then he didn't just say we're doing this, but he actually put it back onto the governor and basically said, stay in your lane. He flat out said, stay in your lane. The quote goes, the state government has no right to interfere with church matters in a way that undermines or disregards God-given authority of pastors and elders. We cannot and will not basically bow down to government-imposed mandatory on our weekly worship gatherings or other gatherings. Compliance would be disobedience to our Lord's commands. So this is the question that a lot of pastors are wrestling with, because there's pastors like MacArthur who say, no, we're going to disobey it. And then you have other pastors, like another big one that made the news is Andy Stanley. They make a church, North Point, said, we're not meeting until 2021.
Wow.
Like, we're just not going to do it. And he says clarity in a time of uncertainty is actually better since we know what we're going towards. But Andy Stanley, they still live stream their services.
Right.
They encourage small gatherings. They just had a baptism service this past Sunday, which is super cool. But, you got these two opposite spectrums, specifically with COVID, and they're like, no, this one's like, no, we're going to obey our governing authorities. Us as Southside, we're like, yes, we're going to obey to the best that we can. That's why we canceled worship services when they dropped the gatherings below 10. We're like, you know what? We can still worship together. We can still gather.
Because we have live stream.
We do. And the church is more than just a building. It's more than just a worship service. But then there's other sides. And a lot of these are more your reformed sides of churches where they're like, no, the entire worship gathering revolves around the table, the Lord's Supper, communion. And if you don't do that, you don't have corporate singing, you don't have reading the scripture, there's no point in a live stream because that's not what church is.
But when did it ever say in scripture that church was a gathering of more than 5 people? Or
it doesn't say anywhere. The Bible just says, don't forsake these.
It says, don't forsake the assembly, and where 2 or more are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst, right?
Right. Yep.
Those are the scriptures that we have to go by.
Right.
So I get that we all like our big corporate gatherings, but there may come a time where our corporate gatherings are outlawed, and you can defy and go to jail. And what's that going to do for the kingdom? And
there are churches doing that. Like a church in Chicago, the cops blocked the entrance and the parking lot so that people would stop going to this church.
Right. I think a lot of it has to do with we as Americans, because I read an article the other day that says the only problem in the world that people have with wearing masks is in America. Everybody else is like being compliant with wearing the masks, including the churches in other countries. It's just in America that we're defiant, and that's because we are a proud nation. We are a very prideful nation. We are proud, and the whole "don't tread on me." I mean, if you're a patriot, don't tread on me. Don't tread on my rights. Don't tread on any of this. But as a Christian, at what point do we say, "All right, I'm compliant," and then at what point do we say, "Don't tread on me"? And I think there is a breaking point. And again, Mark and I are still fleshing this out ourselves. This is a new dynamic for every Christian in America in this generation. But I think it's at the point of when the government is asking you to sin. So it says, don't forsake the assembly, but there was no number given. But we know that Christ is in the midst if there's 2 or more.
Right.
So I think if we can have 2 people like me, they can't separate my household. Mm-hmm. I could still worship and have church with my household. Now, and technology is so amazing. The Marco Polo, all right? So Paul and I have been using this Marco Polo, and Paul Lindgren lives 2 hours away.
Yeah, around Indy.
So, like, we're not anywhere close to each other, but every day we've been getting in the Word together and studying together. There's so much good technology out there that we don't have to forsake the assembly of the brethren. We may not be able to be there physically, but we still don't have to. I mean, look at the technology of what we're doing with this podcast right now.
Right.
And this is just us speaking. We could use the same technology to actually, like, we had church meetings and stuff like that, like actual like conference meetings through Zoom. Through Zoom. And so I get it. I get the frustration. I really do. I'm frustrated. That there, people like SoCal are saying this, but is it better? Like, I get it. If they say, oh, you can't worship God at all, like, ever. Like, that's my breaking point. That's asking me to sin. No, God has the higher authority. But not going to a building, for me, and this is just for me, I'm not saying this is truth or this is everybody's truth. I'm saying for me, that does not ask me to break a commandment of God, because I still have other avenues. Now, if they silenced me, said you can't speak about Jesus, you can't proclaim the holy name of God.
We're shutting down all live stream channels.
You have to worship. You have to worship Trump or worship Obama or worship Biden or worship whoever you want to put in that authority figure over us. Then yes, I would say I'm going to stand against that.
Right.
I'm going to stand against that, and not because I'm a patriot, which I am, but because it goes against the higher authority. And that's the thing that we have to remember. There's a rank. All right. So we all have our marching orders, and God is the top rank. He's the 5-star general, right. Is what he is. But
big guy up top.
Right. He's the big guy up top.
Not the big man upstairs. That's weird. That's another one we should have concluded in last week's episode.
Right.
The big guy upstairs. No.
Yeah. He's the guy on top.
Yep.
Highest authority.
Yep.
And if you think about it in that aspect, you also have to think about that sometimes governing authorities may be out of line, but may not be out of line. What if God's using them to teach the church something? What if he's not?
Right, because you see in the Old Testament and it says like God used different people, like
Babylon.
Yeah, he used terrible people to bring about his perfect means.
Well,
or perfect end.
To bring about discipline on his people for
right.
disobedience.
Right.
That's what it was. I mean, we're going to call a spade a spade. That's exactly what it was. The children of Israel, children of God, the chosen people, disobeyed in such a way and left God and went off worshiping idols and stuff like that he said, okay, it's time for a spanking. That's how I like to put it today. It's time for a spanking because they're his children.
A holy whooping.
It's going to be a couple 100-year holy whooping. Because you guys are going to be killed and then enslaved and beaten while you're enslaved, and you're just all sorts of other horrible things that are going to happen to the children of Israel. And so, am I saying that that's what's going on now? No, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying you can't count that out. That sometimes God allows the government to come in and correct his children. Mm-hmm. That's one of the means that he does it. There's other things too, but for something like this, it has not gotten to the point for me, other than being super frustrating. Yes, I get it. I understand the frustration of every Christian out there right now. The masks are something else. They're annoying to me. I go see a chiropractor a couple times a week, and I just had to start this week wearing the mask, and it's very annoying, very, very annoying.
Right.
But I still have to obey that authority that God has placed over my life right now. They're not asking me to forsake God. So,
and I'm trying to find the video because since we're processing this, I feel like I'm trying to read content as it pops up in our head.
Right.
I'm reading through because John MacArthur wrote a secondary issue or follow-up where he defended his belief. He says MacArthur is the church is protesting lies, deception for the sake of the truth. So he's basically saying that this is a bunch of baloney, and we're gonna rebel against it. And and there's even Jeff Durbin from Apologia Studios who had this conversation, and he said that social nodding, or whatever you want to call it, like you just because it's socially fine, social nodding is actually like he almost said it was a sin. Whereas the fact of if these are lies and all these different things, and we're just bowing to it, are we actually not using our sound mind and logic, and because God says worship him with his mind too. Because if we just go along with, and I'm not comparing this to anyone, just so you know, but some people have actually compared this to when Hitler started doing things, and people just started following suit.
Right.
Well, no, people just started following suit for things.
Right.
But people are asking for America, is this leading to a bigger problem, a bigger situation of government control and all these different things? And it's like, can we separate what it means to be an American versus what it means to be a Christian?
And that's kind of my question that I was about ready to ask. And that's the big thing. It's
and I'm wrestling with this.
We've taken our Christian walks as Americans and our patriotism, and they are so intermingled that we're having a hard time seeing really what God would have us do.
Right.
And I don't see anywhere in the New Testament where the church took up arms against a government, even with Nero. Nero persecuted the Jews and stuff like that, and so the New Testament church was part of that.
Right. But we're not taking up arms. We're living in this thing that they created for us.
Right. But that's what I'm saying, though. I don't see the church throughout history other than the Middle Ages, which that's a whole nother topic that I don't agree with of the Crusades. But
nope, bad history.
You don't see the church taking up arms against the government. The church itself, the true church, the followers of the way. I don't see it. I don't see it through our church fathers, early church history. I don't see it. So to me, it's. I'm trying to separate being an American because it's hard.
Right. But can we separate the two? Like when it comes to like immigration and refugees, as a Christian, I say, yes, obey your government authorities. But as a Christian, for my brother, if I meet someone who's illegal, I'm not going to turn him in.
Well, then see, that's
the question,
this is where it gets a little hairy.
This is where it gets hairy.
Because turning them in, they've done something illegal, right?
Right.
To the world standards.
Right.
So something illegal was done to the standards, so they disobeyed the authority in their life.
Right.
Right? So they started the act of disobedience. So do you disobey and defy the government, which is an act of disobedience?
Or do you talk with them about what a Christian's responsibility is?
Or do you talk to them and say, listen, if they're a Christian, this is you're in disobedience against God by doing this. This is illegal. You're in disobedience. You really need to either turn yourself in or go back to figure out a way to get back to where you're at and have God use you there. And that's not a great thing to think about because a lot of these people come from horrible situations, but it's still civil disobedience. When you disobey a law that is not a sinful law, it's disobedience to God. You're disobeying the direct authority. So do you help and aid in somebody sin? And then that's you sinning as well. Or do you try to, as we're supposed to, correct a brother in love,
right,
and in grace, not necessarily turn them in? I'm not saying like, oh, yep, I got an illegal right here, I'm turning them in. I'm not saying that. I'm saying go to that if you know that brother is a brother,
right, or minister to them,
right. Then you have a responsibility to tell them what they're doing is wrong.
And this is where I'm trying to figure things out again. Going back to America versus not, like when you go to other countries like England or heck even Canada, America was born out of rebellion.
Right.
We have rebellion in our bones.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Right.
You see, and that's just it. Like I listened to a podcast out of England, and they're not talking about the rights and wrong. They're just like, how this is what our government told us, so how do we serve in this climate? That's what I'm looking for. How do we serve our people, their pastors, their teachers, their authors? Like, how do we serve our people in this climate when the government says we can't meet? All right, let's be creative and let's figure this out versus America where it's like, no, we're going to, because America.
Giving them the spiritual middle finger kind of thing.
Basically, because in America, we have the ability to, and if you're not, I know we have listeners not in America, so
right.
We're speaking for us, is America has the ability to change laws, policies, and procedures even if we disagree with them. So if we just, and I'm not saying we are, I'm just processing.
Right.
But if we bow down to everything versus ask why, is that actually not being a good steward of the freedoms that we have been given? Like in terms of, okay, like with this COVID thing, like America has the right to vote their opinion, and politicians have the do all these different things.
To vote politician in, yes, but not to change laws at the whim.
Right.
That is not, we were established and all have agreed, and if you don't like it, then I guess as an American, get out to the polling station this fall and vote for somebody you think that it can do better. But in my opinion, we haven't had anybody better to vote for. We're voting for the better of two evils.
Right.
And we have been for the past 100 years or so. I mean, it's just
true.
It's gotten worse and worse and worse. And people are disagreeing with me. I've had brothers and sisters in Christ go, Obama was the best president. I've had brothers and sisters in Christ go, Reagan was the best president. And I'm saying none of them really bowed down and obeyed God. So I don't consider any of them. They're just an evil, and it's just they were the better of the evils maybe in that time period, but maybe they weren't. I mean, who really knows? But
I mean, some presidents were believers, though.
Every president has claimed to be a believer, but we're some actual believers. We don't know. We're not there on the day to day.
But I think
you could put a facade on.
Right.
I could put a facade on. I could put a facade that, whatever you want to believe. I don't care.
Well, I'm just thinking like not George W. Bush, but I say that like
George Sr.
But George Sr., like, he was a member at the same church down in Texas for his entire life up until he died.
Yeah.
So, and he was a faithful.
I'm not saying that there wasn't actual Christians. I'm just saying we don't
want
really
to say
know.
We don't want to call our presidents evil.
I'm not.
But it's a worldly construct.
It's a worldly look. It all started. Here's how it all started. Israel wanted a king. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it starts. They wanted a king. They didn't want the prophets anymore. They wanted a king, and they demanded a king. So God gave them a king, and ever since then, kings, being men of God, have still been evil. And it's because they're corruptible. Mm-hmm. Rather than following God, they can be corrupted. And in our country, and again, I'm a patriot to the hilt, but in our country, it's not just about the president.
Right.
It's about everybody in Congress, everybody in the Senate,
and
all the judicial areas, state levels, local levels. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. So to say everybody's a Christian all at the same time, don't kid yourself. And I don't mean to make this a political thing, but don't kid yourself. I get out and I vote every election.
Right.
That's my civic duty. That's part of our duty as Christians, is to participate in the place that God has placed us, but also to submit in the authority. And I think Christians in America a lot of the time have issues with authority. Other than if it's not God, I have an issue with it. If it's not my pastor, and even if it is my pastor, I still have an issue with it.
Does that mean I don't listen?
But it's an authoritative issue.
Right. We buck against it.
We always we were born out of it.
Right. We were born out of rebellion.
Right. And they thought they were the founding fathers thought they were doing the right thing. Hey, they may I wasn't there. I don't know. I can read about it, but to say that all of history has been recorded accurately and passed down through generations, it's hard to really say yes, it has.
Right.
And to know every detail that went on behind the scenes of everything.
I mean, I'm thankful for where I live.
Heck yeah, I am. I am. Oh man, I'm so thankful that God put me here, because we hear about our brothers and sisters in other countries and what the horrible things they're going through. Man, we are so blessed, and yet we are like the spoiled kids, man, and we act like it too. We throw the temper tantrums. I don't want to wear my mask. It's in my constitutional right. I don't have to. You can't tell me what to do. Like, I think of my 2.5-year-old, how when she gets mad, she stomps and goes, "No, I said no."
Temper tantrum.
Just at 2.5, and I feel like
run that by me again, kid.
I feel like a lot of us are doing that right now, including myself. I'm sitting here going, "It's stupid to wear a mask," and I'm stomping my foot and be like, "I don't want to wear a mask," and it's like, it doesn't matter. They're not asking me to go against God. They're not asking me to renounce God. They're not asking me to worship a false idol. They're saying, hey,
put on a freaking mask.
Put on a mask when you're out in public. Hey, try to limit the contact, because if you truly loved your brother, you wouldn't want them to get sick. So try to limit and try to keep a distance between yourself.
Right.
And do I think this COVID thing is real? I've had mixed thoughts throughout the whole thing.
I mean, it's at some obviously real, because we know people who have it.
Right. At some points, it's like, is this thing as deadly as they say it is, or is it not? Because I've seen both sides. I've seen it's severely deadly, and then I've seen that the survivability rate is 99.99%, and it's there's more deaths in a seasonal flu than there has been in this, and so it's like all this conflicting information. But
and then there's even like I saw somewhere like South Africa, or maybe not South Africa, but an African country. They just swabbed a bunch of random things, like a goat, a fruit, a tree, all these different things, put fake names on them, sent it to an actual test center.
And it all tested
positive. So you hear stuff like this. You hear other things. I'm not saying COVID is not real. I know people who have almost lost their life because of it, and people who've had to live through.
Well, we know somebody who had to work on the COVID unit, Paul Lindgren.
And
so he was a firsthand witness, and he says it's real. He says it's horrible. It is horrible.
And we're not saying it's not.
Right.
But what a lot of people are saying is we have, and I'm not saying I'm agreeing with one side or the other. I'm just saying what this side says. So, but it's the fact of, we have never responded to anything like this before in the past. So why responding to this in this way now? Is media creating a false narrative? Supposedly there's a cure, so we don't need a vaccine to stop it because there's a cure. So is this just one big ploy? And this is where a lot of conspiracy theorists will go and the question is a conspiracy is years ago, Bill Gates had that massive TED talk where he's like, we are over the threshold for the earth to be okay. We actually need this many people to die to be okay.
Right.
And then all of a sudden COVID hits, and then now they're pushing for a vaccine. And
that's been the whole push of abortion clinics though too.
Right.
Is to keep us from overpopulating the earth.
Right, yeah. Planned Parenthood
that's
is
what it's
not
all about.
a good thing.
No, it's not. And that's exactly what it's about. It's selective breeding.
And if we want to talk about what Planned Parenthood actually for, and now Black Lives Matter is hand in hand with Planned Parenthood, when in reality it was kind of like one was trying to literally eradicate
yeah.
You know, the Black Americans that are beautiful. I mean, all people are beautiful.
Well,
Black lives are beautiful. They want to get rid of them because they thought they're a lesser class.
It wasn't that just them. It was the Jewish people, and also
everybody.
The lady who came up with it was basically a Nazi.
She was awful.
Yeah, the way she thought in the very beginning and when she first proposed all this stuff was horrible.
Right.
Absolutely horrible.
So a lot of these people who are conspiracy theorists are saying all these various different things, and now child abductions can go up because everybody's masked. And does the mask actually do anything? Why are we having all these things? Are we bowing down to a lie of a bigger ploy? And do we have the right as an American to speak up? And I think that's where Christians are having a hard time understanding. I'm not talking about the radical right wing, the radical left wing. I'm talking about people like
the average day
us
Christian
who are in the middle going, I want to love my brother. Like for me, it's the fact of, do I wear my mask in my own house? No, I don't wear a mask in my own house. Do I wear a mask when we're podcasting? No. I mean, I think we actually social distancing right now.
We're close. Close enough.
But but you know, it's a real life for people who have almost lost their loved ones because of it. So it's like, I don't want to just virtue signal, but if this will help slow this disease down, yeah, dude, sign me up.
Well, and that's my thing. We know it's real. We don't know the extent of the damage that it can actually do. But because we don't know and we are commanded to love our brother, we should take the precautions that are being suggested, not because we have to or because we're being, oppressed or anything like this, but because we love our fellow brother and we don't know. I mean, it cracks me up. It cracks me up how I think about when the Mueller report was going on, and everybody, both sides of the aisle, Christian, non-Christian, they were lawyers. They were experts in the field of being a lawyer and experts on the law.
Right.
And then COVID hits, and everybody's an expert doctor, and they're experts on all medical things.
Right.
And then Black Lives Matter hits, and everybody's an expert on that.
On social issues.
And then now we're back to COVID, and everybody's an expert on it again. And it's like, that's America for you.
Right.
We're always an expert because we think that we have data at the end of our fingertips and that we could type anything into Google and it gives us an answer. Well, if you truly believe, I mean, we joke around about it, but a lot of people actually do believe just about everything they read on the internet, and a lot of it's not true. A lot of it's made up. So,
but at what point? But what is made up? And if people, and I'm just coming from the other side. Is what if the CDC is taking money to fabricate all these things?
I mean,
what if?
What
you know what I'm saying? I mean, I have my opinions on it.
Who are we to question the authority that God has placed over us?
Americans.
That's who we are. We're Americans, and nobody tells us what to do.
So before I give my opinion, Yeah, because obviously we've already learned Fuller's.
Hey, I'm just fleshing it out.
I love it. I mean,
I'm just fleshing
I'm trying
it out.
to figure this out.
I'm thinking through that because my opinion walking into this was more of, I'll wear it because they say to wear it. But as I think through it more, there is a reason why I need to wear it. There is an authority that is over me that is telling me to obey the authority over me that he has placed over me. And until they ask me to go against the Lord, I'm to obey him. I can tell you it probably was not the most joyous a time for Rack Shack and Benny or Daniel or any of the other people.
That time in the furnace probably sucked.
Yeah, I'm just saying but I'm saying there's probably a lot of stuff that they had to do or that wasn't normal to their custom back then that, they weren't making sacrifices in the temple because there was no temple. How do you think that made them feel? But they still were in subjection to the authority that was over them to the point where the only time they stopped was when they were told to bow down and worship. Then they're like, nope, sorry, we can't. We'll do everything else, but we can't do that. We cannot sin, and we cannot go against God.
So let me ask you your opinion then, okay? And this is why I'm scared to talk about it, because I feel like no matter what I say, Karen's going to be mad.
Dang it, Karen. Always Karen. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot of flack for this one.
And that's the thing that's like,
but we got to flesh it out.
No matter what side of the equation you're on, someone's going to get ticked off and mad and then scream and kick. And I'm such a dang people pleaser that I hate myself sometimes for it. I'm working on it, guys. I'm working on it. But so let's say someone, Joe Schmo, I don't know why is it always Joe? Poor Joe. It's always Joe. People have been making fun of Josh's a lot on social media. So Josh, let's say Josh disagrees and says, you know what? Load of crap. What should this person do when they disagree with what the government says? And as speaking as Americans, we have the ability to speak our voice because we have the freedom of speech and the freedom of press and freedom of religion, which is MacArthur's argument of we had the freedom of religion. You are a civil authority. We're a church authority, so stay in your lane.
Right. There's a separation of church and state.
If someone disagrees, what should they do? Should they basically, for lack of a better word, give a middle finger to everybody and then just put on a mask that says, I've seen masks that cuss people out over this stuff, and I'm like, I don't want my kid reading that. But what should someone do if they disagree?
I mean,
time to get stoned
here's
on RTC. This might be the last episode we ever do.
No, I told you, I was giving you my opinion on it. I'm not telling people that this is absolute truth and this is what they need to believe, but this is what I see as truth. And if you're questioning, I strongly encourage you to go and study the scriptures for yourself. And if you can't trust God enough to protect you and to give you the knowledge and really let you know when they're out of line, and if you're well versed in the scripture, then you should know when they're asking you to sin, which this is not. And you should know when you should obey and when you should rebel, which in my opinion, from the scriptures I've read, this is a time we should obey. Not only because of the authority figure that's asking us to, but also because we're supposed to be loving our brother, the second commandment.
Right.
And protecting our brothers is part of that. And protecting our community is part of that. And that's what they're asking us to do. They're trying to, because I think they know what this is, but I think they don't know what this is, if you get what I mean.
But it's scary because if we do everything, are we going to, we've already wrecked a lot of our economy.
But that's my thing. And
I'm a single parent.
If this wasn't a real thing, if this was just a power grab, President Trump has worked so hard to get this economy here in America at a state to where it was the best economy that has really ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And unemployment down at the record lows. So why would he tank it all? Answer me that. Answer me that, America. Why would he purposely tank America? I mean, you would think that as a president, he's got a lot of knowledge of what's really going on, a lot more than what we do as simple folk, as laymen. And you would think with a strong economy and a low unemployment number that he was setting himself up for a re-election really easy. And now with this, he's going to struggle, and it'll be interesting to see if he actually wins this election or not. So why would you think he would make something like this up?
Right. And I think we need to be vocal about things that that matter.
I mean, this is just talking about COVID.
Right. But with COVID, but I'm thinking like child sex slavery.
Yeah.
Like, it's a legitimate question of how come not a single person, not single, but how come everyone went nuts over all these other social issues, but then this issue comes up and
it's silent. There's silence.
There's hardly anything.
Right.
That's a legitimate question. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I think sometimes we put American before Christian. And as Americans, here's the deal, though, is who put the authorities ahead of us?
God.
God put the authorities ahead of us. We're called to listen and subject ourselves to our governing authorities unless they tell us to what? Sin. Now, people will argue, like John MacArthur and a lot of other church people that I know either at our own church or other churches all across Michigan and all across the world, where they're like, the government can't tell us to stop meeting or have these different breakups. Now, I get kind of upset when Walmart can say, but mom and pop shops can't. That's a different issue. But it's more the fact of specifically, I'm thinking church Christian, how we're supposed to live in mind. We have all these conspiracy theories, which could be real, could be not. I'm not saying that they're right or wrong.
Right.
I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to go there. You like that one?
I do.
So, but at the end of the day, do I have faith enough in God? I'm going to get on my little horse here. Do you have faith enough in God that as long as you follow him, he's going to figure things out? Do you think God is too small that he needs you to be openly defiant?
Right.
And here's the other question, too. How many Christians are hurting the name of Jesus right now? How many Christians, because of this, I'm standing up for American rights and this and this and this. Okay, well, how... If your kingdom over everything, if you're supposed to seek first the kingdom of God and all these things should be added unto you, should you be more focused on loving the person right in front of you and building that bridge? And if you're being openly defiant, could you actually ruin the name of Jesus for everybody in the sake of American rights?
And that's what I'm thinking about with John MacArthur, with the whole spiritual middle finger he's given up, is what is that doing for the kingdom? What is that doing? Because we're being selfish as Christians, because we can't worship God unless we're in a building surrounded by hundreds or thousands of people, because we can't do these things that we want to do. We're going to say, basically, screw you, we're defying you, which is actually defiance of God. No wonder why I think the church is, why we're waiting for Jesus to come back. The church ain't ready. Mm-hmm. We're not ready. I want to be a Uriah. That's who I want to be. You remember Uriah, right?
Uriah the Hittite?
The Bathsheba's husband.
Oh, that's what I thought. So I'm like, why are we going to the
Bathsheba's husband? All right, so David had a conspiracy, a government conspiracy, right? That he wanted Bathsheba,
and what did
and what did Uriah do? He came home and would not even sleep. He did everything that was right. He continued to obey his king. Yes, he didn't know that his king was trying to steal his wife, and his king was sending him out to his death. But you know what? He obeyed his king. Regardless, whether he knew the truth or not, he obeyed his king.
David never asked him to sin.
Exactly. And we're not being asked to sin in this COVID thing. None of us Christians throughout the world are being, that's not true. I won't say throughout the world.
Because there's the Christians in Africa and India who says either become Muslim or you don't get COVID relief.
Right, exactly. And that, I mean, at that point, hey, I'm not taking COVID.
You think a mask is persecution over that?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Or, okay, you can't have your hydrochloroquine. We're outlawing that as the FDC, which that's what they're saying because it's dangerous or whatever they're saying now. But we're dealing with a little bit of that and having to wear some masks in public and maybe not being able to meet in a physical building, but we have all this technology. We can still have our freedom of religion, and yet we're complaining and we're not wearing the mask. I can tell you this, the Christians over there and those countries that are getting that, they're still wearing the masks. They're still obeying the government. They're just saying, I'm not turning in Muslim. Sorry, I'm sticking with my faith. I'm sticking with Jesus. But they're not doing the things that we're doing over here. They're not standing up and rebelling against the authority that God has placed over them. So,
and here's my thought too with the gathering of the saints for the Christians is when we say we need to get together. Now, I love the fact that people are coming back to church, and as long as they feel comfortable, and our church sanctuary has been set up for social distancing, I think it's going to take a big mental toll on the kids at school to be 6 feet apart and can't talk to anybody. Like, I think we're going to see a really bad mental health issues, just with knowing kids' psychologies. But with this whole church thing, if Christians stopped focusing on being served, a friend of mine calls it spiritual constipation, because all you do is you pour, and never let out, so you just build up and boom, 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 boom. Right. We have so many Christians who just want to sit and be spoon-fed.
Right.
And they want to, and we go to church, and if the pastor's not preaching, people ain't growing. But except
for the pastor, most of the time is just preaching a very basic, watered-down gospel.
Or the fact of our pastors fighting. I'm not saying they are, but our pastors fighting for the regathering of the church for their own pride's sake too.
Right.
And
well, let me ask you this: can a pastor preach to a camera and kind of like what we're doing now, and still teach, and people tune in and watch it?
Yeah.
So
now
if that's what they're worried about, then that can still be done. We're doing it now.
I will say it's so hard to minister to people when it's only on phone calls, and because we haven't been able to do funerals or weddings,
and I get that
it's hard.
It's frustrating. It is hard. It is very hard,
man.
It's very hard, and it's very sad. And we've had that in our own church, and it is hard.
I mean, Pastor Scott had to wait 3 months for a memorial service for B.
Right.
Mom.
I know.
2 months.
3.
2 or 3 months. It's still a long time.
It was very sad, and it stinks, but we can further the kingdom more by being obedient, and it's not obedient to the government. It's being obedient to God, and I guess that's the way we need to look at it. Just like when we do work, we do it not for our glory or for our company's glory, but for the glory of God. We need to do the same thing with this whole thing. We don't obey the government for our glory or for the government's glory. We do it for the glory of God and for the furtherance of the kingdom. So that's my final thought, man.
And I'm still chewing on a lot of this. I struggle and I wrestle because I don't think it's a black or white issue. Everyone wants to make a black and white issue, and I feel like over the last all quarantine has done,
I think it
has made us draw battle lines in the ground even harder.
You know what it's made me do? It's made me study more. And I think there is a black and white. It is a black and white issue. It's obey God.
Right. Now, when COVID first came out, I was like, I'm not wearing a mask because whatever.
Well, they weren't requiring it.
Right. And
so I wasn't either.
I'll be bold enough to say was I wrong? I mean, I don't know. History will tell. But right. I had to put it this way. I had to humble myself and go, you know what? And this is where the American side, and I already hear it. I hear the people in my ears where it's like, I'm teaching my kid to obey the government authorities. And they say, hey, Elliot, I don't like this, but this is what we're told to do. It's nothing wrong. He actually thinks his dinosaur mask is pretty dope. Like he actually asked to wear it because he's like, this is so cool.
That's my kids. They got Disney masks, so they're all about it.
Evie has one, but it's too big for her face. It's kind of cute. It just goes, boop, falls off. But I don't put one on her because of just her age. But I want to teach him to do that. But then I hear the thought,
we got Celery back
Celery's
here
chilling back here. He's getting
eating
some dinner. He's getting his late night snack.
Up,
he's getting his cereal.
Sorry. Anyways.
But then I hear those voices in the back where it's like, well, Mark, what if the government is wrong and you're bowing down to the higher power at B? And it's like, okay, so as Christians, though.
But what am I bowing down to?
Right. Are you hurting your witness? Are you not following God? And this is the part where I know people who get very passionate about these things on both sides of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, are we so focused on being Americans that we forget what it even means to be a Christian?
Right.
And here's the question too, then, do we hold to the Constitution more than we hold on to the Bible?
Right. That's a good point.
And that's not to say we shouldn't hold to the Constitution, because as Americans, we are supposed to hold our government authorities as this is your job. You're not doing it. Okay, well then you're out next term.
Well, exactly.
Like that's our role as Americans.
Right. We have that right.
And that's why I vote.
That role.
Someone wants to ask me, they're like, well, as a Christian, do you vote? I'm like, yeah, because with great power comes great responsibility. That's in the Bible somewhere.
But so many Christians go, well, his kingdom is not of this world, so why would I vote?
Exactly.
And it's
but
like,
to whom much is given, much is
so
required, man.
I don't want to hear you complaining about the government if you're not out there voting, because we have been placed in this country and we have a role to play in this country, and part of that role is voting for those who will help the country. And I'll keep allowing us to be able to further the gospel. That's the purpose of our role here.
So I guess my final thought is, unless the government says, and this is what MacArthur's saying. MacArthur's saying, stay in your lane. I'm keeping the government in check, and you're telling us not to worship and all these different things. I'm like, okay.
But he's not telling them not to worship. He's just saying, hey, you can't worship together in such large gatherings.
Because we want to try to contain this thing.
Right.
My personal
We're
opinion,
trying to keep people as safe as possible.
as much as
Oh, man, the gears are grinding.
It's so hard because, I mean, my final... I mean, it's not a final thought. I feel like the conversation's just starting, is the fact of, I know what people say. I have the most right-winged friends imaginable about wearing
I'm one of them.
No, you're not. You're more middle than some of these people. And, you know, the government asking us to wear a mask is not telling you to give up your Christianity.
Right.
And the government telling us we're trying to not gather. They didn't just say churches can't gather. They said, no, we're shutting the whole world down, basically. It wasn't, I mean, when they're shutting down the most profitable sporting things in the world, they're shutting down the NBA. They're hurting. I mean,
they're not asking us for anything that they're not asking out of everybody else.
And as Americans, we have the ability to have these digital platforms and still commit.
Right.
And for churches who are like, no, we need to gather. I'm like, okay, have you taught your people well enough to bring their own forks and spoons to their own Bible reading?
Right.
Have you made a community enough where they're not so needy on the Sunday morning that they can have what we, like you and I have, and what you, me, and Janelle have, and other strong believers that we get to talk to? Now, I get the ability to. I was at church every single week, so I still got to see other Christians when people have been quarantined and by themselves. Right. But as Christians, this is our time to step up, to reach out to those who are lonely,
right,
and to come alongside other brothers and sisters in ways that we always wanted to. And grace is messy, and people are messy. But at the end of the day, whether or not the conspiracy theories are true, they may be. I think some are,
but we won't know.
We won't know. But what does God tell us to do? God says God says, have faith in me.
Go back.
Look at Job. He says, where were you when I created this?
Right.
Do you not believe I'm big enough and powerful enough to handle this?
Right.
And you read it right there in Romans.
Romans 13.
It flat out lays it out. And here's the funny thing is it says, that first part of that passage is all talking about our responsibility to the state. But then you know what our primary duty is? That scripture right after that?
Right.
It's love.
Right.
Romans 13 and 1 Corinthians 13. You can be completely right and be an annoying gong if you don't have love in it.
Right.
And, right after we talk about government authorities, it says, don't owe anyone anything, money, except love one another. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments: do not commit adultery, don't murder, don't steal, don't covet. And any other commandment can be summed up in this: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, this is the fulfillment of love. So if you want to love your neighbor, give them their distance. In my opinion, wear a stinking mask. I know it's a bold statement, and with a lot of friends that I have.
Yeah, and same here. I totally get it.
I hate it. I don't want to wear it, but I do.
And for those Christians that are like getting all tight and tense right now, I would say, go study the scriptures. If you think we're wrong, study the scriptures. Find the scriptures and reach out to us. I will gladly answer questions. I will gladly take rebuke if we're wrong. But I don't see that we're wrong. I see that this is by obeying the authority that God has put over us. And in this instance, we are loving our brothers by trying to protect them if this thing is real. Because we don't know. Again, they're conspiracies. Well, what's a conspiracy? Well, it's a thought about what we think is going on.
And I'm not saying don't research and don't think about it.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it. Do what you do. But remember to research the Bible first.
And the Bible even says, because people ask Jesus, and Jesus is like, okay, give me the coin. Whose face is on the coin?
Right.
Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give unto God what is God's.
Right.
Jesus never once said, because Jesus right there could have said, screw the government.
Right.
But he didn't.
There's many times he could have said that, but he never did. But he put himself in subjection to the government.
Yeah, he did.
He did.
He did.
And he was the higher authority.
No, I mean, he was crucified because he claimed he said he was king of the Jews, which is a rebel.
But, okay, Rome was in authority during that time, right?
Right.
So he allowed himself to be taken to Pontius Pilate for sentencing. He didn't have to. Now he did because he already knew it was coming and he already knew why he was doing it.
But if Jesus submitted,
we can submit.
we can submit.
But anyways.
I'm tense, bro. I'm tense. I feel like I need a back massage, but since we can't get back massages on the podcast, we're going to do something different instead.
Time for Fun Facts with Fuller.
I love it.
That laugh.
That's the one right there.
That laugh makes everything better.
It does.
Do you have a fun fact? Because we need one, buddy. I feel very stressed
to
right
roll
now.
us out of this intense conversation, which has gone on way longer than we even assumed it would.
That's because we're processing it.
We are. Let's run into a fun fact here. So the fun fact of the day,
And
Mark,
I don't even know this one, man.
Mark, did you know the first potato chip flavor was cheese and onion?
Wait. What?
It was cheese and onion.
But then why does Lay say the original is just original? Like it's just some potatoes.
Just hold on. I'll explain.
I'm not okay with this.
Yeah, but it's the first flavor.
Okay.
The first flavor
That's
was
valid.
cheese and onion. So before Cool Ranch, barbecue, or sour cream and onion, there was cheese and onion, invented in 1954 by a fellow named Joe Spud Murphy.
No
That
way.
was his nickname, was Spud.
Oh, about that. Like that was his real name. That'd be awesome.
The flavored potato chip was a novelty at the time when you could pretty much get your chips salted, and that was it. So that's the original, just salted.
Gotcha.
So his seasoning of the chips would pave the way for all that we love about the junk food from that day forward. And as you can see, I love my junk food.
So we love coffee and tea and all
everything
the good
else,
things.
so.
All the good things. Well, guys, I'm scared to say this now after we had this conversation, but we want to know your thoughts.
Yeah, let's hear your thoughts.
You know, Facebook, DM us, shoot us a text, shoot us an email. All the stuff is in the show notes, and it's very accessible. Hopefully by this point, the website will be launched. If not, I apologize. We'll be getting there soon. It's a lot harder than what you think. But let's continue the conversation offline. You want to know more? You want to chit chat? Facebook, Instagram, Real Talk Christian Podcast. Text us at
574-400-5352.
Yep. Make sure you listen to Spotify, Google, and if you listen on Apple iTunes, please leave us a review because that is the best way for us to get into eyes and ears. And if you're watching us on YouTube, because the video actually worked this week,
Yay.
You guys are awesome. We love you guys too. You're also part of the RTC family. But until next time,
Take it easy.